Sometimes healing doesn't come in grand epiphanies. It slips in quietly, like the calm after a long storm. It's the night you stop fighting the pain, the night you surrender to the silence. And somehow, that silence becomes sacred. Welcome back, listeners, to this episode of the Cosmic Confluence podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today, for this episode, we sit down with Lee Carlson, author, journalist, and Zen practitioner, whose memoir, Passage to Nirvana, chronicled his recovery from traumatic brain injury through writing, sailing, and Zen practice. His new book, A Single Excellent Night, invites us into another layer of awakening, one shaped by his relationship with writer and teacher Peter Matheson and by the ongoing dance between discipline and surrender. Listeners, Lee's work is not about perfection. It's about presence. It's about learning to sit with what is, and in that stillness, finding something quietly extraordinary. And I have had nights like that too. The ones where everything fell apart for me, and yet somehow that falling became freedom. So today we'll explore what makes a single night excellent and why it might just be enough. So, Lee, welcome to the show, and it's really an honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Sana. I'm very happy to be here.
So Lee, let's start with the title first. A single excellent night. It feels both simple, but it really is profound. So, if I may ask, like, what does excellent mean to you now, compared to how you might have defined it before your injury or your Zen practice?
So before all of that, I was a typical type A Westerner. I was a journalist in New York. I was very competitive in sports. So I'd been trained all through my schooling and in my work that excellence was something that you attained, and it was, like getting an A+ in school, or that it was getting 100 on the exam, or that it was this sort of pinnacle. And after my accident, after my studies with Peter Matheson, after years of meditation and learning to let go and learning to be present, it took on a very different meaning for me. Excellence means to really be in the moment and to enjoy the moment. And it's not necessarily a competition anymore. It is about surrender, as you said. It's about presence. And it is about having the discipline to get to those places as well, and to stop always striving for this supposedly pinnacle of excellence.
That really that is interesting, and it also resonates. And was there any moment for you, when you realized that healing didn't mean returning to who you were before, but it's like becoming an entire different version of you?
Yes and no. So it was returning to who I was before, but not who I'd ever realized it was before. I was returning to a self that was really authentic, that my teacher, Peter, fortunately, my name is Lee, so it was very easy for him to make a rhyme out of it. He kept saying to me, "Be Lee." That was his instruction to me, just be Lee. And so I was in my early 40s at the time, and I had to let go of the person that I thought I was and that I thought I wanted to be. And I discovered a new self, but that new self was also a very ancient self and a very authentic self. So it really went full circle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you, especially when I was reading your intro, the something that really like made me think is especially about Zen. Zen practice is it demands presence, but it also demands at the same time structure and discipline. And because you have been, as you mentioned, you have been this type A, a type A person. Um, did your devotion to Zen ever feel like this another form of striving, like the very thing Zen wants against?
It certainly did in the beginning. Absolutely. I threw myself into it headlong with the typical, just full speed ahead. And I don't care about the pain in my legs. I don't care about the pain in my back. I don't care about, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to do this. It was that in the beginning. And that's part of the paradox of Zen, especially the kind of Zen that I practice and that I practice under Peter Matheson. It was very structured. And that structure, however, that's again one of the paradoxes of Zen, that structure ends up giving you freedom, because if you work within that structure, it takes away a lot of distractions and a lot of other things on the outside, and it takes you into a place of silence and presence and freedom that you probably wouldn't get otherwise.
Mhm. Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think it's kind of sometimes I think a paradox. Like the more we try to be still, the more restless we become, because we kind of have been habituated of that chaos, that racing of thoughts and everything happening very fast. And I think it also reflects that how surrender, it often begins the exhaustion, uh, probably not every time an enlightenment.
Yes, that as it's referred to very often in Zen and also in other traditions, monkey mind. Your mind, it rebels almost. You're trying to silence it and you're trying to sit quietly, and your mind is just going, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start just chattering away and I'm going to bounce around. And it's kind of like trying to nail down a blob of mercury. And it just is hard. And your body and your mind try to rebel against that, because we very, very rarely just sit in silence and try to still our mind. It just doesn't happen. We're not trained to do that, especially in the West. And so when you finally start to do that after 40 some years of living the other way and thinking the other way and operating the other way and always being in motion, there is a rebellion that takes place in your mind. And you have to, in Zen, in Japanese Zen, there's a very famous series of Sumi ink paintings called Taming the Ox. And it's a metaphor for taming your mind. And in the beginning, the ox is an unruly beast, which is wild and is untamed. And no matter what you do, it's just, running around the field and breaking fences and just, being crazy. And then, but eventually over time, the ox finally gets tamed. And that's a metaphor for basically Zen practice.
Hmm. That's very well explained. Okay, so moving on to your new book. And before that also, um, this book has been inspired, by your, like the teachings and of course, your relationship with Peter Matheson. It really seems pivotal. So I am personally very interested to know, Lee, that what did he teach you that you only truly understood years later?
So being a impatient Westerner when I first started, I remember one time. So when you study with a Zen master like that, you are exposed to them in many different ways. And one way, you're sitting with a group of people meditating and he's sitting with you. And then another way, you have private one-on-one meetings and discussions with him where you both are sitting cross-legged, just literally inches from each other. And it's a very intense, and usually that happens after hours and hours of meditation. So you're very aware and he's very aware. And I remember one of my early encounters with him in that situation, it's called dokusan, is the Japanese term for that meeting face to face with a teacher. And I said to him, I said, okay, tell me, what's the secret of Zen? Because I just was impatient and I just, wanted to jump ahead in the course, so to speak. And he sort of laughed and looked at me, but he very honestly said to me, the secret of Zen is compassion. And it didn't sink in at the time. It didn't sink in for a long time, but I now really realize that very simple answer, how true that really was.
Mm. Mm. And of course, compassion for ourselves and for others as well.
Compassion for ourselves, compassion for others, and compassion for the world around us. Peter was also a great naturalist. He wrote a number of books. He wrote a book on tigers. He wrote a book on cranes, the crane. He wrote a book on sharks, and he was constantly traveling the world and going to remote places that were very natural. And so he also taught me and was constantly teaching all of his students the importance of our place in nature and in the world. And that's very Zen too. Zen has a grand tradition of using nature as teaching tools and using metaphors from nature to do that as well.
I think that is so much needed right now, Lee, because I think nature, like, even if I'm not aware about or fully knowledgeable enough to know about Zen practices, but I think nature teaches us everything, like if it comes to resilience, authenticity, even if we consider all the buzzwords around us, I think it has been there. And it is such, it's such a beautiful, beautiful, example of how kind of everything falls into its place, even if it is destructive or it is damaging or it kind of goes into its beast mode, but it's kind of that storm before the stillness that nature is about to have. So I think in all the aspects, nature is definitely one of the greatest teachers that we already have.
And we need it now more than ever. I'm now Luddite. I think technology is wonderful. It's giving us a lot of wonderful advances in medicine and computing and other things. But at the same time, we have to be very careful not to lose our humanity. And, the whole idea of artificial intelligence, I'm a proponent of real intelligence, of human intelligence. And I think that by being in touch with nature, we're getting so cut off in nature in so many different ways. We're just in our apartments or our houses with the air conditioning on or the heat, or we're in our car. And we don't get out into nature nearly as much as I think could benefit us. So I think it's very important to continue to focus on the natural side of things as well as the technological side of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Much needed. Yeah. And, I think this title, Single Excellent Night, like if I can make a guess, like was it like the series of some magical, unexplained moments that you have had this one particular night that readers and listeners can expect from your book? Or, how would you explain?
Yes. So the actual title comes from a quote from the Buddha, supposedly, although, that was 2,500 years ago, so nobody knows exactly what he really said. But the quote is, "Let not a person run back to the past or on the future build their hopes, for the past has been left behind and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let them see each present moment. It is this person who has had a single excellent night." So that is where the title comes from, and it refers to living in the moment and really being present. And it in my case, there are two mystical experiences in the book. And the first one happens at night, and it's very profound and very mystical, and it happens about halfway through the book. The dramaturgy of the book is that it starts out and it kind of builds to this climax where there's this mystical experience, this moment, which is a single excellent night. And then it kind of, it's like a 2-act play, and then it kind of starts over again, and then it builds again to another final moment, which is also an even more intense mystical experience. And that actually happens on a winter beach. It's during the daytime, it's not at night, but it it's that idea that you were living in the present moment, whether it be night or day. And I just love that quote. So it seemed to work really well, and everybody loved it for the title. So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning, although it really sounds very simple, but it is so profound. It is so profound. And like, the book also, I think, could mean that, a single excellent night can recalibrate a life. Um, if I may ask, like, what concrete change, it could be like behavioral or relational or spiritual, can you tie back to that night or that day on the record?
absolutely. The first experience that happened at night, I know you were interested in energy. And so it was a experience where suddenly, instead of perceiving the world as matter, which is the way we perceive it 99.9% of the time, you can pinch yourself and you can pick up things and whatever. I suddenly experienced the world as energy, and all that I saw, everything was energy, and everything lost its matter, its shape, and it maintained this kind of sort of shape of energy, but it was, and I realized in that moment, what Einstein had seen. Up until then, I'd always believed that energy could be turned into mass, and it's Einstein's famous equation of E equals mc squared. But I realized after that moment that they exist simultaneously, and depending on how we are seeing things, depending on how we tune our antenna, our brain, that we can see it either way. And most of it, like I say, most of us, 90% of the time we see it as matter, but we could see it as energy. And that was such a profound and moving moment that after that, I was not with Peter when that happened. I called him the next day and told him what had happened. And his first words were, "Oh, how wonderful." It was just, was very happy. And then he said to me, "Write everything down, because you will forget this. This will fade over time, and make sure you just make a journal of entry of all this so you remember it." And actually, those are the few times he's been wrong, because I've never forgotten it. And it just totally changed how I see the world. And because I also saw how connected we all were, how our spheres of energy connected with each other, because it was at an event where there were probably, I don't know, 60, 70 people at this event. And it was a meditation event. Everybody was sitting down, and you could see that how we all connected and our spheres of energy connected. And that has never left. That totally changed how I saw the world. And then the second event, which was the second mystical event, which was even more profound to me anyway, was really an encounter with the divine. It's all I can say. The heavens opened up and everything changed, and the way I experienced the world changed. And again, Peter told me, write it down, you'll forget it. I've never forgotten it. And once you've had that experience, and once you realize the just amazing love that underlies all things, it never leaves you. It doesn't go away.
Wow. Oh, and especially you mentioned about, like, this energy and mass, like this interchangeable. I think our cosmos, our universe is a great example. Like, um, we talk about antimatter or dark matter, or this nothingness that, after a certain um, boundary, or this point in the universe, there is nothing. It's just, I'm building the stars, there's nothingness. But then there's still energy in there. I mean, scientifically I cannot say, but what logically I could think that, we can experience this energy because so many forces are interacting in there. So I think that is such a beautiful reflection, and good that you wrote it down. I think that is something. It really sometimes it happens with us. It could happen with many of us that we would have this dream, or sometimes some kind of magical experience, which could make no sense, maybe to the other people, but then, we kind of forget it. But I think the very essence of our being, our existence, maybe could tie up to that particular experience or moment. And we will forget it that.
And I think deep down, we've all had some moment of that, some memory of that, maybe in the womb, maybe as children, maybe in a previous life. I don't hold myself, and many people have had experiences like that, so I'm not unique, but it is something that is very wonderful. And it's interesting you talk about dark energy, because the way I wrote the book, I was a journalist, and I'm a big believer in telling stories, and stories help people learn. So the book is actually a series of stories, but then after each story, there is an essay accompanying that story, because some people also learn that way, we're reading essays. So the chapter about the single excellent night, when I experienced the energy, there's an essay after that talking about energy. And I was editor-in-chief of a physics magazine a long time ago, just for a brief period of time. So I understand physics, I like it. And so in that chapter, I talk about dark energy and how it's this, that modern science is starting to find this thing that permeates the universe, but they don't know what it is. And if you go back to the ancient Sanskrit, we always talk about it in modern terms as nothingness, but I think if you actually go back and look at some of the original terminology and the way it's translated, it's not necessarily the original terms that were used by the ancients, by the Hindus and by the Buddhists. It's something more. It's not nothingness. It's almost like everythingness. And so I think you're right. Within that dark energy, within that supposed nothingness, there is a lot going on. There is everythingness that we just don't know what it is. And one of the things that I say repeatedly in the book, there's a famous Zen saying that was one of Peter's teachers used often, which is, the world is one bright pearl. What need is there to understand it? The world is all one bright pearl. What need is there to understand it? And I realized that just learning to appreciate these things and learning to enjoy them and learning to just be in awe of them is just as important, if not more important, than trying to understand them. I know modern science is hell-bent on trying to understand everything, and that's okay. But sometimes it's best to just sit back and just enjoy it and go, this is really magnificent. This is wonderful.
Yeah. I think that once again ties back to this presence, or the being in present, that moment in present.
And if you are truly present, you never know what will arise.
Exactly. Superb. So if a reader has only ordinary nights, what micro practice from the book would you expect to still move the needle? Like, is there any way that, maybe that can help them to actually maybe change their perception?
Well, I'm a big believer in meditation. It worked for me, Zen meditation, but it's not for everybody. And so there's a lot of meditation in the book. It's not an instructional manual. It's not how to. There's plenty of other good books and videos, and you can go to teachers and meditation groups to learn that sort of thing. But I do believe that finding stillness in some way, and for some people it might be taking long hikes in the woods, or it might be walking along the seashore, or it might be found in church, or whatever works. But I do think that finding that quiet, that stillness, a way to quiet your mind, and then seeing and being present, seeing what arises, is really the key. And like I say, Zen meditation, traditional Japanese Zen meditation is what worked for me. But I don't force it on anybody. I believe that everybody finds their own path, and there are different paths to the same thing. So.
Exactly. That is true. Beautiful. So, Lee, I think all of our listeners, they'll be so excited to, check out your new book. So if our listeners, they would like to connect with you and also get hold to your upcoming book, so what would be the best way?
So I'm very excited. The book was just released 2 days ago on Tuesday, and it's already the #1 bestseller on Amazon in the spiritual healing category. It's the #1 bestseller in the Zen philosophy category. It's the #1 bestseller in a few other categories as well. It sort of floors me that that's happening so quickly. So it's available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Noble and many other retailers. If you have an independent bookstore near you, you can go order it through your bookstore. I also have a website, which is leecarlson.life, not leecarlson.com, but leecarlson.life, because I think that's more suitable. And on my website, there are links that you can order it there. There are also, I encourage people to reach out to me if they want. I purpose on my website, I have my email address. I might not answer right away because I might be on a retreat or doing something, but I do answer. I like to connect with my readers and answer questions and talk to people. So that's another way that people can do it. Yeah, have fun.
And first of all, congratulations, Lee. It's really great to know. And yeah, I think patience is the key here. So listeners, do check out Lee's book, A Single Excellent Night, and connect with him. I'll have all the links in the show notes for every one of you. So just refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And I think maybe excellence isn't a summit, but I think it's a clean ledger for one night. And I think listeners, leave Carlson's A Single Excellent Night. It doesn't sell any rescue. It just documents reality with enough care that meaning can show up uninvited. So if you are listening on a hard night or a difficult day, log one detail faithfully. Let the truth be sufficient. And Lee, thank you so much for this much needed conversation. And thank you so much for giving us this gift, with your book and Peter Matheson's teachings as well.
Thank you, Sana. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Cosmic Confluence. Until then, keep listening to Cosmic Confluence. Subscribe to us, leave us a review, and keep listening. Thank you so much.